And welcome to Abundant Retirement with Tony Roberts. And I'm hosting the show today along with my good friend, Mr. Tony Shore, who is commanding all of the boards back in the studio. And some of those boards, as he just showed me, can do weird things. So, uh,
Yeah, we can have some
yeah,
fun on
we
the show,
we
right?
we 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 got a lot of stuff going on in that board back there, Tony. I tell you what, man. But
They should have
it's
never given me these toys, I'll tell you
yeah,
that.
it's post July 4th weekend. I hope everybody who is out there watching. Boy, that's a good word. Who is out there watching and listening? Hope you had a great 4th of July weekend. Hope it was relaxing and meant something to you. And Tony, before we get started, and it's sort of on a somber note, but man, the tragedy down in Texas, man, with the flooding and those poor people and especially those
Oh
kids in that
my god,
camp, man,
those little
that
girls.
was tragic. And our thoughts and
Terrible.
prayers go out to all of those people down there dealing with that because
Oh my god.
I just can't imagine. I mean, came
No,
up, in the middle of the night with hardly any warning whatsoever and just unbelievable. So
did you
yeah,
hear it rose like I hear some different numbers, but it was like 24 feet in 45 minutes or
yeah,
something
yeah.
like
It just was. It was phenomenal. And
it
and
would like
again
it
and
was like
again,
if the
most
dam broke,
every
but the
you
dam
know
didn't break. That's
No,
what's
and
weird.
it's 3 o'clock in the morning and everybody's asleep, and it's like they don't even know this thing's happening. It's incredible. So again, I can't imagine. I can't imagine having young children and sending them off to camp for fun and activities and thinking everything's fine and dandy, and next thing you know, they're swept away in a rolling river. So again,
That's terrible, and they were
it's awful.
little I mean,
Yeah,
little kids,
I
really
just saw
young
something today,
kids.
Tony, where they said two sisters. They found them and they both unfortunately passed away. But there was two sisters and they were clutching each other's hands. That's how they
Oh,
found them. Isn't
jeez.
that sad? I mean, I just can't imagine. I can't imagine as a parent even just comprehending that. But again, I don't want to be
No, can you
somber,
ima
but
as a
I'm so
yeah,
sorry. It's such a
as a
sad thing.
parent, you can't fathom sending your kids off to a camp, which we've all I mean, my parents sent
Yeah,
me off to many church camp, scout camp, you name
4-H
it,
camp.
band
Yeah,
camp, 4-H.
yeah,
We did it all. Same with my kids. When they were little, I sent them off to camp, and, you never it seems like the safest place. They have,
yeah,
they have leaders involved. They've done it for years. I mean, you never imagine, that something like that could happen.
yeah,
It's
and
just tragic.
it,
It's one of the
it's so
saddest
sad.
things I've heard, yeah,
Yeah,
in a long, long time, and there have
yeah,
been some tragedies, but that is a big one, and that is 24
yeah,
feet in a matter of minutes. That's, raised
just
24 feet in
yeah.
40 within 45 minutes is I mean, it's just what can you do at
Yeah,
that point?
it's
That's
just it's just it no, there was not even time to react, and that's
yeah,
the sad part about it. And
yeah,
so yeah, and not yeah, like I said,
mhm,
not to be start out with Debbie Downer here, but by my heart and thought and prayers, man,
yeah,
it's devastating. So yeah,
yeah, it
and
is.
hopefully, hopefully, I'm sure the state, the country, the people, usually we'll find ways to try and help out and do some things. So yeah, if you can support in any way, I don't know if Red Cross or whoever's involved down there,
Yeah, I think they're gonna set up
please
some
do it.
support, methods for those
Yeah,
families, down there, especially locally, but I'm sure it'll be national too. It's all over, the news. The whole country
yeah,
is mourning, that loss. Well, I'm glad you brought that up, and our hopes and prayers and thoughts are obviously with them for what that's worth. It's, you feel helpless, and I'm sure the people involved feel so helpless,
yeah,
the parents. So,
yeah,
but getting to our topic for today,
yeah,
Tony, I know you wanted to talk about this new legislation that has now passed.
yeah,
It's gone through the House, it's gone through the Senate, the president's desk, the one big beautiful bill. We're going to have one big beautiful show about the one big
oh,
beautiful bill.
the
And you hear so many things about this bill, and there's so many. It's a 948 page bill or whatever it is. It's a big bill. And as we find out different things that are in it, um, It seems like some is really, really good. Some things are going to be really, really bad for some people, it seems. So, you gotta make sure that you're looking at quotes from the actual bill, because there's a lot of spin out there, isn't there?
There's an inordinate amount of spin, and Tony, I'll be just straight up with you here. I found out something a couple of weeks ago that I did not know, and I guess maybe I should have paid more attention in civics class. But I always wondered, why do we have to just keep stacking all of this stuff into one bill? Why can't we just look at each and everything on its own merit and either pass it or not pass it, or whatever the
Right.
case may be? But what I found out is that there is there's rules and regulations in place that says anything that is attached to the budget bill can be passed with a unanimous vote.
Yep.
So long as we got 51 votes, it can pass.
Right.
If it's anything that is not dealing with the budget, then it has to stand on its own. Well, it has to pass with a supermajority, which is
Yep.
60 votes in the Senate.
Right.
So that's the reason that you find that every time there is a budget amendment that is coming through the coffers, you've got everything sliced up and diced and attached to it as possible, because they know if they can get 51 votes and it's in there, then it's going to be passed, versus it standing on its own and possibly needing 60 votes to pass, which, as you know as
Right.
well as I do, trying to get 60 votes in the Senate on anything right now is not going to happen. So
Nope.
I just didn't know that, and again, that's my fault. I should have been a little more conscious of my civics, I guess, to understand it. But now that I do know that, now this thing makes a little bit more sense, in that you've got everything from A to Z being attached to the bill in order to be part of it, to get it passed and put into law. So yeah, the president did sign it on 4th of July and put it into law. And I thought it would be just, and Tony, listen, we're still trying to work our way through this thing as well, but
Oh, yeah.
I have caught a few highlight points
Yep.
that I think that our listeners and people out there that are looking at doing their financial planning, retirement planning, different things like that, are very prevalent and probably should be discussed. And one of those is that they have made the 2017 tax cuts permanent.
Yeah.
And for most of us out there, I feel like that's a good thing.
Yeah.
The 2017 tax cuts that were put into place basically lowered taxes about 23 to 25% in 2017, and they were due to expire at the end of this year. So if they had been allowed to expire, then guess what? Everybody was going to get a 23 to 25% increase on their income tax rates. And for the most part, people like to have their income tax rates low. So again, making those tax rates permanent is a good thing. And Tony, as you and I well know, there's nothing permanent in politics or Washington, D.C.
Nope.
So again, by making it permanent, it means one thing: over probably the next 4+ years, we're going to have good tax. But down the road, when somebody else wins an election and maybe they have different criteria or whatever, and a different Congress, they can always go in there and unwind the permanent tax plan and make it to be whatever they want it to be.
Oh, sure,
So
they can amend it in any way, shape, or form.
exactly
As
right.
we've seen over the years, they make a permanent tax change, and nothing is permanent, except the
Exactly
fact
right.
that the only three things that are permanent are that you are going to pay taxes, and you are going to eventually pass from this earth. And in my life, I also like to think that one of those three things that are certain are death, taxes, and pizza. For me, I throw
Well,
pizza in
Tony,
there to add a little positivity. Little
Tony,
positivity.
Tony, and you're so slim and svelte, man. I don't see where a pizza would even fit in your portfolio, man.
Yeah, the svelte has never been used. That word has never been used in reference to me, Tony, and so we know the viewers who
Oh my
know Tony
gosh.
is being sarcastic,
Oh
but
my gosh.
but, uh, but you're right. I mean, that making the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, from
Yep.
2017 permanent, uh, I think it benefits a lot of people, including the middle class. I know it benefited my wife and I, and I'm by no means wealthy, but I'll tell you, um, that standard deduction really helped.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
that really helped a lot of people. I know it helped my dad
Sure.
in his tax situation. This year he didn't owe any. He's retired and has very little income anyway, but it really did help him. And that can really help a lot of people out there. So I'm glad to have that. I like the way they simplified taxes by rather than have to itemize everything to try to get, your
Yeah.
taxes, minimize that tax burden. You got a pretty hefty standard
Yeah,
deduction.
standard deduction is very prevalent, and again, if you don't have to itemize and do things like that, that's a nice bump and things like that. But I think more importantly, Tony, when you're looking at retirement planning, you've got to sit there and maybe sit back and say, all right, is now the time to take advantage of Roth?
Yeah,
And
tax free.
because whenever you're putting money into your employer's retirement plans, whether it be the government TSP or whether it be the 401ks of the world in the private sector, the bottom line is that the money you're putting into your retirement plans are either going to be taxed down the road when you pull those monies out, i.e., called traditional, or if your retirement plan has a Roth option, you can choose to go ahead and pay the tax now and have the amounts grow tax free, and so be able to pull it out down the road tax free. So
Mm.
again, when you're looking at what I should do, I think you should weigh very heavily and say, okay, do I think tax rates in the future are going to be higher than the ones that they've just made permanent? Do I think the tax rates in the future are going to be higher? And if you think that is the case, then probably looking at doing a Roth option on your retirement planning contributions today may make sense. So again, these are things that we like to talk to all of our clients about here at the firm because, again, I always preface it. I'm not a CPA, I'm not a tax attorney, but through 40 years of being in this business, Tony, I know there's 7 or 8 or 9 different tax strategies out there that can sometimes be beneficial. And if you're going to be paying me a fee to represent you as an advisor, I feel like it is my due diligence to have a conversation and put the facts on the table about some of these different strategies and see if any of them make sense or not for you. And if they do seem to make sense, and guess what, we can drill down a little bit farther into them, or we can now get in touch with your CPA or tax attorney and say, hey, look, we're thinking about doing this for Susie and Joe. Does it make sense? Shoot some holes in it, do whatever. But these are things that we are capable of doing that a lot of the brokerage houses, the banks, and other maybe even advisory firms out there don't do, because they instruct their advisors to basically say if anything is asked about tax, you just simply say you need to go talk to your CPA. We're not going to talk to you about any type of tax strategies. And again, to me, it just seems like if you're paying me to be your advisor, then why don't we talk about the biggest hand in your pocket in retirement? So those are things that we look at
Yeah.
here at the firm that to
Well,
me make a whole lot of sense.
taxes are the number one cost most people will have in retirement. That's going to be your biggest
Yeah,
expense, and healthcare. Those two,
exactly right. Yeah,
and you help your clients and people you meet with deal with both. You have to have tax planning as part of your overall financial plan and retirement income plan. If you don't, you're going to end up making very costly mistakes. And that in and of itself is a costly mistake, not having a plan in place and looking at, hey, do I need to be putting some money in a tax-free bucket so when I take it out in retirement, it's tax-free, like a Roth IRA or cash value life insurance. And there are some options for tax-free money or an HSA for tax-free money in retirement, right?
right. Exactly right.
Yeah.
So these things to me are very, very important. You brought up healthcare. I know another one of the things that they've kicked around in this bill quite a bit is to a certain degree some Medicaid
Yep.
uh, cleanup, for lack of a better words. The best way that I can understand what's going on with that is that they're going to put some provisions in there that basically says if you're capable of work, you've got to be showing that you're either out there trying to find a job or do something of that nature right there, and just handing out Medicaid benefits and this, that, and the other without having to show a proof of need is supposedly going to be dwindled down to a certain degree. I don't know what that means or what it entails, but that's the piece that a lot of people seem to be kicking around as being, something that's a little bit concerning about possible folks losing, I guess, maybe some type of health benefits or something like that under Medicaid.
Sure.
So that's a piece of it there. Um, I think a couple of other things that are part of this bill that are very important is the fact that uh, to a certain degree, I think they're capping the earnings, but to a certain degree, if you make a substantial amount of your income through tips, Trump ran on this, no more tax on tips. So again, they've got it in there. If you make a substantial amount of your income on tips, there's going to be no tax on those tips, and I think it's up to a certain cap limit. It seemed like me, I saw $25,000, but don't hold me to that. But again, if you're making money with tips, not having to pay tax on it is important. I think they're maybe revising the tax a little bit on Social Security, which is going to help our seniors to a certain degree. So I think that'll be a good point to have going forward, and hopefully keeping a little bit more money in our pockets versus sending it elsewhere. Um, some things that I've seen that are maybe somewhat concerning, more or less to federal employees, Tony. But I just read this morning, again, a lot of this stuff is hot off the press, so we're trying to get our heads wrapped around it. But it appears that effective January 1st of 2028, they're going to be doing away with the supplement piece of the federal employees' pension plan. And for those of you who may or may not know exactly what that is, there are three ways under the current uh, pension plan with the federal government to retire. You can have a minimum required age achievement with at least 30 years of service, or you can be age 60 with 20 years, or you can be age 62 with 5 years. So what they found is that with minimum retirement age, let's say it's 57 with 30 years.
Mhm.
So I've got 50, I'm age 57, I got 30 years of service, or I'm age 60 with 20 years. Then what could happen is that not only could you start getting your pension, but because you're not age 62 and thus not eligible for Social Security, they allowed you to receive on top of your pension what they called a pension supplement. And that pension supplement was based upon your age 62 Social Security benefit amount, and take that times the number of years that you worked for the federal government and divide it by 40. So again, I've seen it to where it could be substantial, $1,500, $1,700, $2,000 a month that people would be receiving for a 2, 3, 4, 5 year period up until they hit age 62. At 62, it cut off because, again, you were Social Security eligible at 62. So um, now, again, the way I'm reading this is that if you retire after 1/1 of 28, the supplement's no longer going to be available. So any people that are retiring from now up until that point, it's my understanding that they're still going to be able to get the supplement, and thus, Tony, maybe that makes some people decide to go ahead and go out earlier rather than waiting around. So
Hmm.
yeah, that was one thing. And then the other thing in dealing with federal employees, I think they are going to go to what they call a high five instead of a high three. Currently, federal employees' pensions are based upon your highest 30 consecutive 36 months of earnings. And now it sounds like they're going to push that out to consecutive 60 months. So again, you've got to have those higher earning years for a couple of more years to sort of capitalize on that pension and things of that nature right there. So those were two things that I saw this morning that are pretty prevalent when
Yeah.
it comes to federal employees and their overall retirement planning, things like that. So again, you know what, Tony? we giveth and we taketh away, man. I mean, it's just
Yep.
it's part of life, and
Oh,
that's
yeah.
all it is.
There's
And
plenty of
I'm
positives and negatives in the
yeah,
bill, and it kinda depends on who you are and how it washes out. Sometimes they'll pass a bill like this, but then how and when will these things be enforced? And, but I just looked it up just to confirm. You were talking about taxes on tips,
yeah,
and, you're right, the big beautiful bill that was passed, it says that you can deduct per year up to
yeah.
$25,000 in
Okay,
tip income from your taxes.
yeah,
If you make up to 25,000, um, 25,000 or less, you can deduct it from your income
yeah.
tax, federal tax that
So
year.
again, I don't know if maybe maybe you're a server at a high end restaurant and maybe you're making 150,000 a year. What does that mean? That you still get to deduct the first 25, and if you make 150, now I'm only paying taxes on 125, or does it just mean no? If you're making above 25, you don't got. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question,
Yeah,
but
I think it's
you
just
know,
tips. So
yeah,
if you're reporting or make more than $25,000 in tips a year, then you only have to pay. You can deduct that 25,000
yeah, and then just so
first 25,
if you made
and
yeah, so if you
anything
make
else.
40,000
You
in
have to.
tips, you get to deduct the first 25, and you only pay taxes on 15.
But I don't think the way it's worded, it doesn't look like it includes your income. So you could make $100,000, and if 25,000 of that is just from tips, you get to deduct the whole
Yeah,
25,000. If
yeah,
50,000 of that is from tips, you still just deduct the
the 25.
25,000.
Okay.
But it
So
doesn't
again,
include the
Our
non-tip.
CPAs will be busy trying to understand all this.
They will be interpreting these laws, especially, and there's a lot about taxes in that law, and
Yeah,
there's just a lot to do with that. There's a lot of things to do with healthcare, and the Affordable Care Act, the subsidies. Some of that might be considered a negative because some people's health insurance will go up by, maybe a few $100s a year, and so, the worry is then people will say, "Well, I can't afford that," and won't be on health insurance.
yeah,
So, it just depends on, who you are, how you look at it, what your circumstance is, and how quickly they enforce it. I know the no tax, you can deduct up to 25,000 in tips, that expires in, I think, 2028, so
yeah.
that's a limited. Some of these
Okay.
do have an expiration
So some
date.
things of like a okay, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah,
Tony, and I always go back to my grandfather a little bit, and and I've always sort of been this way, but he told me early on in life, he said, Tony, he said, the only person who's responsible for taking care of you actually looks at you in the mirror every morning.
right. That's right.
And I've always tried to live by that.
Yep,
And again, whether some of these uh new whether some of this new legislation actually gives or taketh away or whatever the
sure,
case may be, the
sure.
bottom line is if you are finding yourself in a predicament to where you are having to depend on people in Washington to take care of you,
Oof,
you
yeah,
might need to back away from the table and realign yourself a little bit because like you said, what they giveth one day they can taketh away the next, and that's really no way to go through life. But
yeah, it's
it is
tough.
what we live. It is what we
Yeah,
live in.
it is,
Yeah.
and fortunately, I think a lot of the things in the tax portion of this bill are beneficial to
Yeah.
the majority of Americans out
Yeah.
there. So that's good.
Yeah.
Um, but we'll learn more as more and more comes out and they try to implement these things, and we will
Yeah,
see how it
and we'll
goes.
probably figure out how much, pork we've got in there too, you know?
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
sure I'm sure
The word big is in the name of the bill.
oh my
So
gosh. It's well, again, and that's the reason I go back to what we opened up the show with, Tony. It's like, why don't you just carve that stuff out and go vote on it on its own merit and let it stand on its own, everything else
yeah,
like that. But again, the reason they don't do that is because you gotta get a super
couldn't get it
majority
back.
of
Yeah.
60 confirming votes in the Senate to make it happen, and that's just not gonna happen anymore. So that's the reason all of this stuff gets attached
Yeah.
to these budget bills because you get to be passed just on majority, and so be it. But that's part of it right there.
Yeah.
Um, other than that, I mean, those are just some of the highlights and things like
Sure.
that that I read, with some verbiage and things this morning. I thought it might be interesting for our listeners to get a little bit better understanding of some of this
Sure.
and take it and run with it. But yeah, I'm glad you brought it up, and we had some time today to speak about this and have a little bit of a a give and take with it. And as you always say, Tony, as well, how do you take some of these new rules and regs and things like that and fit it into your own personal standpoint? And that's probably from hopefully getting with somebody that deals with it day in and day out, and let them help cipher the way through this thing so you can figure out what the heck's going on.
Right. And as an expert in the financial field with financial planning and retirement planning, for both uh, traditional workers, public workers, and the private sector
Hmm.
and federal employees.
Yeah.
If you're out there and you have questions or want a second opinion on where you're at, or you don't have a written retirement income plan and you don't have it all planned out, or you want to figure out how these changes are going to affect your plan, pick up the phone and give Tony Roberts a call. Tony, how can our listeners out there get a hold of you and your staff?
Well, again, you hit it on the head, Tony. They can pick up the phone and call us because, again, most people when they're looking at retirement, they what I call 1A and 1B. Can I have increasing income throughout retirement? And 1B, make sure I don't go broke.
Sure.
If you can maintain those two things, now you can start layering the other things on top of the tax planning, long-term care, and other things like that. But you've got to make sure you got 1A and 1B taken care of. So that's where we start, and that's where we try to help everyone that we meet with. But yeah, you can reach out to us. You can call us at the office. Our toll-free number is 888-955-3665. Again, 888-955-3665. You can go to our website, arobertsassociates.com, arobertsassociates.com. You can go email us at info at abundantretirementplanning.com. Again, info at abundantretirementplanning.com. But you can reach us any and all of those ways. And Tony, subscribe. Listeners, subscribe so that we can be bigger and better for all those that are out there.
Yeah, there you go. Go to one of the major.
I sound like I'm trying to sell a pair of shoes or something to you, Tony,
Go to
when I say that.
YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Amazon Music. Make sure you subscribe to Abundant Retirement with Tony Roberts, and give us that honest 5-star review. All right. Thanks, Tony, for being our expert and bringing a lot of information to the show today. And listeners, that does it for today's episode of Abundant Retirement with our host, Anthony Roberts.